In this video, I'm going to easily visually display to you what is going on with the octahedron and the way in which we see the celestial sphere. Remember, I mentioned before that the octahedron acts as a resonant absorptive antenna. If you look at radiation patterns of dipole antennas, it has the same dipole effect, where it is splitting the circle in two, and we see the same type of pattern there with our eyes. Our eyes, wherever we are within the inside of the earth, whatever latitude we're at. In this case, we're at 45 degrees north. Our eyes are always going to carry it to the center, and it will figuratively split the celestial sphere into two. And so the half that is facing you flips in curvature, and it appears as if that side creates a dome over your head. It's not a real dome, it's a virtual dome. But that is the way that light operates, that energy operates, that electricity operates within the earth. That resonant absorptive energy that sucks the light up toward the center will always intersect the celestial sphere perpendicularly. That is what creates the sun and the moon inversion. We think the sun is straight across, however, it is curled upward and inverted. Light is always bending up toward the center wherever you are within the earth. Horizontal dipole radio energy will always bend upward from the ground. This is the illusion that the secret of the universe holds.
Three, two, one, drop.
The lift force and the sink force of the electromagnetic flux. There's an inversely proportional relationship between the two. Blue arrows represent the centripetal convergent lift force. It draws objects to the center, where the current is attracted to the moving convex surface of the celestial sphere. The lift force is stronger in the center and weaker at the edge. That is why planets have such an easy time staying aloft toward the center, because there's not that much sink force and plenty of lift force. If it weren't for the magnetic sun attracting the planets, they probably would crash into the celestial sphere. The lift force cohabitates with the centrifugal sink force, which has the inverse proportion effect. The sink force is the ether push force we all experience on the Earth or in the Earth. As it moves, the divergent fluxes put the brakes on the Earth, preventing any rotation. Remember Wheeler's gyroscope on his huge neodymium iron-borne magnet? The centripetal lift force perpetuated the magnet in a viscous free flux near the center. Yet the centrifugal divergent sink force stopped the gyro on the edge. That's what's happening with the Earth. The sink force generates a depression to the west. That's why bullets sink to the west and rise to the east, because there's a greater clamping down effect for projectiles shot into the downstream of the sink force. This is also what causes eastward deflection of flying objects. They seek the least resistance, which will always be found eastward of the meridian. The sink force is so strong at the edge it holds the water at bay. The ether sink force eliminates the Coriolis or the Atmos effect from being the cause of this phenomenon.
It is almost like these electrons are running into a glass wall in space, said Professor Daniel Baker, director of CU Boulder's Laboratory for Atmospheric and Space Physics.
There is a good reason to believe that it works within a concave Earth model. Actually, it's the only model that correctly describes a lunar eclipse because of the Gegenschein.
And the software that calculates the position of the drone doesn't take into account that the RF waves are bending up.
The very instrument that heliocentrists will use to tell you that the Earth is rotating has actually turned to damning evidence that it is not rotating.
And tell me a little bit about cellular Earth.
I showed this concept on a previous video, like if you zoom in on a camera.
And Thunderbirds are go!
Apparent detection via new telescopes with concave lenses of otherwise invisible terrestrial entities, ITE. It was published by the Thunder Energies Corporation, Florida, USA. Ruggero Maria Santilli is the man behind this. And
so what we think is a straight line is actually curving. It's like our eye is traveling up a curve. If you center a camera on an object, and then you just merely zoom in, what you find out is the center object you were centered on is no longer in the center. And the reason why is because of bending light.
The Earth is a closed system. We cannot leave the Earth. The Earth is a closed system. We cannot leave the Earth. The Earth is a closed system. We cannot leave the Earth.
It changes position. It's the same with a ship that appears to be going over the horizon. It's not actually going over the horizon. With your naked eye, it appears as if a ship is going over a horizon. However, if you get your camera out and you zoom in on the ship's hull is still there and you can see the whole ship.
I have one video entitled Flat Water Doesn't Exist, and it's really true. I mean, if you look at a spirit level,
It's an optical illusion, is what I'm trying to get at. So the more powerful of a telescope, and if air's conditions are right, if visibility conditions are right, you could see extremely far, and you could see land actually going up.
What I'm showing you in this video is the flight plan that we actually used for flying back from Rio to Sydney, Australia. And this is some information on the estimated time of departure from Cape Town. These are the weather charts, and you'll see that's the Rio to Cape Town leg. There's the weather chart, infrared satellite weather. Now you'll see the wind patterns. You know, these little lines demonstrate the wind direction and strength.
Oh man, that is pretty cool. That is pretty cool. That is pretty cool, man. Wow.
Yeah, it's brilliant.
So we had very, very good tailwinds right across there. It was just a nice, quick flight.
For the flat earthers.
Genius. So if that means the guy was standing in the center of the area he was surveying. So if the guy is off to the side at a higher elevation, it's going to cause a different type of warping of the terrain. You know what I mean?
The evidence that we've seen doesn't suggest that what we've been told is true.
Flat earthers are trying to use concave water to prove flat Earth.
Stake 1 has the laser 30 centimeters above the water. Stake 2, he has the laser centered on that stake at 30 centimeters above the water. Then they sailed to the center between the two stakes, and they were going to measure how high the laser was above the water.
Well, I personally have been to Lake Balaton with FE Core, and we've actually done a laser test from one end of the lake to the, well, didn't do the full lake because it's massive, but we did a 12-kilometre test, and we could actually see the laser from one end to the other. And since then, the guys have actually produced a 40-kilometre laser test.
Okay, so my friend sailed back to my position. Together we made a measurement in the middle of the distance between the two stakes. The measurement showed that the distance from the water surface to the beam was 39 to 40 centimeters. We decided to check if everything was okay with the laser and the stakes. Everything was still perfectly fine. We made another measurement in the middle, and it showed the same thing as previously. The beam was about 40 centimeters above the water surface. So in other words, On both ends, the laser was 30 centimeters above the surface of the water on both shorelines. However, in the center, the laser was 40 centimeters above the water's surface, which would indicate the water actually curved like this. So it actually showed that the lake had some sort of concavity to it.
So this guy with a laser debunks all the pictures?
No.
The lake had some sort of concavity to it of 10 centimeters in the center.
The only logical place to start is to show you how nature created its very first pattern.
Who have laid the foundations of the earth? Right there in the middle, guys.
The first thing that God does is create the 3 dimensions. It does this by projecting a beam of consciousness from a single point in all 6 directions: front, back, left, right, up and down. You may need to pause or replay this video several times before the implications become apparent to you. To define some boundaries, all God needs to do is connect the end of every point to the end of every other point. Once all the ends are connected, what we have is an octahedron, which if viewed from the correct perspective reveals a hexagram, also known as the Star of David.
The sun is the negative power supply to the octahedron, and the power supply proves it's vibrating. It's like the sun spins around the celestial sphere and it sucks up electrons off the negative Earth. And light occurs from the electrons being funneled up and converging into the sun. That's where the sun's light comes from, like a light bulb kind of. Light emits when the electrons go through the filament.
I know of exactly one thing that supports the concave Earth model, and that is the Tamarack Mines anomaly.
If the plumb bob experiments were pointing to globe being the truth, then they wouldn't be suppressed.
I read something like a 30-page technical paper.
They've been repeated loads, they've talked about, they've taught. If you look into the plumb bob experiments, there's no alternative to the result. There's no there's no flat earth saying we did the plumb bob experiment and it was flat. They were parallel, or globe saying that it converged. What you have got is just non-concavers pulling apart the result of the divergence of the showing the concavity, like saying that it was a gravitational effect off the sides of these, like the mine shaft that it was done in and stuff, and it's like,
At the bottom of the 2 plumb bobs, the distance was greater. It's exaggerated here, but it was essentially 8.22 inches greater at the bottom than it was at the top. And this was 4,250 feet apart, basically. And so what that is saying is that if you projected where these 2 bobs would essentially connect, you're talking 4,000 miles. Inverted hollow earth, okay? This is the continental, the granite plate. This is the basalt, the oceanic plate. Beneath that is the moho, the mantle. That's made out of metal. And then there's another layer of water.